Hi, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk About Skills, Baby. I am your host, Kelly Ryan Bailey. Each week, I chat with inspiring visionaries about the skills that make them successful, how they developed those skills, and their innovative approaches to improving skills-based hiring and learning around the world. Come learn what skills help you live your best life. Today, we are joined by Sallyann Della Casa. Hello, how are you?
How are you? I put on my glasses. I saw you looking all smart and nerdy, and I thought I'd match you right away.
You know what? Sadly, it's like I need them now for the computer, but I also have one of those like blue light filters in them. And I swear, when you're sitting in front of Zoom all day long, do you have that in yours? It is so helpful.
No, I now that you told me, I'm gonna go ask about
Oh
that.
my gosh, you need to. It's really amazing. Well, let me before we jump in, you guys, let me just give a little background on Sallyann. I am so happy to have her joining us today. So Sallyann spends her days obsessing about GLEAC, which is her technology company. It measures and develops soft skill gaps for any job, current and future, in 10 minutes a day. GLEAC's client and partners include Prada, Accenture, Korn Ferry, Monster, and more. GLEAC has been chosen for Expo 2020, which is now 2021, as we know, to upskill all Expo visitors for 3 months after leaving the Expo Future of Work Pavilion to ensure they are future ready for emerging jobs. This is amazing, which we're going to jump into more. But Sallyann is also the founder of Growing Leaders Foundation. In partnership with the UNDP, thousands of at-risk youths, I can't talk today, and adults annually benefit from her foundation's work delivering soft skills in the Caribbean, Latin America, and MENA region. Sallyann, I need to say this, Sallyann, because like I am just so impressed. Sallyann is one of the 4% of women globally who has a patent pending method and algorithm for measuring soft skills as a sole inventor. Like, it's amazing. And let me tell you something else about Sallyann, you guys. I get to say all the fun stuff that I'm sure we don't ever say about ourselves, but she also holds degrees. It's 5 degrees. Am I right? 5?
Wow.
And certifications in law, organizational behavior, and urban planning, amongst others. She speaks 5 languages. She's a published author. Her education spans the globe from Harvard University to Franklin College to University of Toronto. Like, I don't know where you haven't been. It's amazing. But right now, you're in the APAC region, and her foundation has worked with so many large companies and in that area and impacted so many. She's just really done so many wonderful things, and I am so like honored to have you joining us today, Sallyann. So thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to say to you and all of your audience members is, all of those things, they sound good on paper, but I can assure you I am absolutely a work in progress and I know absolutely nothing. I've come to learn that. So Kelly, thank you so very much for having me. I look forward to sharing some of my stories and hopefully some insights that can provoke your listeners.
Yeah, no, I am so happy. You know, Sallyann mentioned to me the other day, and I will just say this because she's so modest and I love it. But she said to me the other day, you know, I forget what accomplishment we were chatting about. And you were like, well, that took 9 years. And you described like the challenges you overcame. And so I'll add to what we just described, that yes, you've done all of these amazing things, and you should definitely be celebrating that and be so proud. But you guys, this takes work. So just so everyone knows, it doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of times we need to step back from those things and not take ourselves too seriously. Because I think the worst place we can be is look at ourselves on paper and go, "Oh, I've arrived." I think that's the worst place we can be as human beings. So I just want to mention that, Kelly.
Yes, no, I totally agree. Well, on that note, what I would love, Sallyann, is if you could, because I get to say all your highlights, right? But like what we would
Yeah.
love to hear is a little bit about your journey. You know, what led you to GLEAC? I mean, we'd love to hear more about this foundation. This just sounds fantastic. Just your story.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So I will start with, I spent the first 10 years of my professional life pretending to be a lawyer. Um, and I say pretending to be a lawyer because those 5 degrees, I got them very young, Kelly, at 21, just trying to fit in and be everybody's version of who I should be, coming from the Caribbean, with Asian parents. So academia and being accepted, is a very big thing. And those 10 years were the most difficult time for me because, and I think many people will identify with this, is, I represented everybody's version of what success looks like, right?
Mhm.
So the right degrees, the right things, the right board position, the right salary, and deep inside, I was dying.
Oh,
Every day I would go into my office and I would feel like darts, were on my
wow.
forehead going, this
Yeah.
cannot be it. And I think my biggest act of courage on this particular journey was stepping down from the wrong mountain
Mhm.
and figuring out really, who am I and why am I here? And, it goes back to our journey of childhood.
Yeah.
There's evidence of who we are our entire lives if we just look.
Yes.
And most of the time, so for me, I was always this very confident kid questioning everything. And I was volunteering and mentoring and teaching my entire, since I was 13, starting from Make-A-Wish Foundation in Toronto, all through
Wow.
college. I was, my college roommate, who is still a very good friend of mine. I was volunteering at a psychiatric center holding their meetings, and everybody would be like, what do you know to go talk to people? And I'm like, I just know how to connect with people.
Yeah.
Um, and all through my law practice, my secretary of 8 years, Maureen, I saw her recently. She's an attorney now, a brilliant attorney. For 8 years, she's like, everyone would come into the law firm and go, where is she? And I was out teaching in community schools. I was 7 years in a row volunteer of the year for Kids and the Power of Work, which is part of the Child Labor Committee in the US. I just thought those things were hobbies and did not realize that the thing that came most natural to me, I didn't realize that's not only my area of passion, but I very uniquely, I had it also aligned with my area of strength, my
Yeah.
ability to communicate with people and connect with people. So
Mhm.
I had the blessing of stopping. I literally just stopped when I turned
Amazing.
30. And, everybody panicked. My mom kind of went to my other family. I think she needs to talk to somebody. Um, you know, I literally just stopped and just silenced the noise, because there's a lot of noise when
So true.
you get to everybody's expectation of what successor should be. So nobody understands what's wrong.
Mhm.
And I just silenced the noise and just dug in and just asked this question, which is also the title of my first book, called Who Would I Become? And I
Wow.
think we forget to ask that question of ourselves. And we are allowed to ask that question of ourselves over and over and every
Yes.
single day. And then we get
Yes.
to answer it in whatever way
Right.
we wish. And we don't have to have our experiences or our degrees stop us from what that next move is. So,
Right.
in looking back, I knew I always enjoyed mentoring and teaching. So I created my foundation, Growing Leaders Foundation. And it's always in the area of soft skills, because
Mhm.
that's actually what's very special about me, that I didn't know. I thought it was all my degrees,
Yeah.
and none of that has any meaning. What I do now has nothing to do with all of those degrees that
That
seem
is
so
so
important.
funny.
So I am like a living example of, looks really good on paper, but the thing that really makes me who I am and so unique in the world are my human and soft skills.
Yeah.
So my foundation does that work offline. And then my technology company, GLEAC, 3 years ago, some friends of mine founded Kareem, the ride hailing company that was purchased by Uber for 3.1
Oh,
billion this year. Yeah.
wow.
So they called me in and they're like, can you head people for us? And, after a long while, I'm going, no, 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 no. I said, sure, I'll come take a look. And it was such an eye opener, because I realized I can build a tech company. I got
Wow.
access to engineers and data scientists. And I realized at that moment, it was like a kid in a candy store going, I can do this.
Wow.
And I ran off to Harvard, and that's where I came out with my algorithm on measuring soft skills. So the
Uh-huh.
measurement of soft skills and the why, and there's a reason I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Um, I am the last person in the world, if you know me. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not, I get a headache when I see Excel. But the fact that I can be the person that came up with an algorithm to measure soft skills and then have the courage to go and file it, and then have the courage as the sole
Yes.
female to go, this can actually make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
I want to share that story with everyone, and particularly women, to go,
Yes.
you don't have to be an expert in something. You
Mhm.
can come with all kinds of experiences from other domains and completely change an industry that you're not familiar with and you have not been in. So that's my point of that, and I hope that
It's
inspires a lot of women to go file a bunch of patents.
I think it will, but like I'm gonna add to that because like what I'm hearing you describe too in terms of like your past journey is that the thing is that this is something that before you knew it in yourself, right? Like this is something that you lived and breathed. And I think what's so fascinating is that when you say, you don't have experience per se, but it's just like this natural inclination for you. But if you hadn't gone through what you went through, you may have never ended up making those decisions at this point to go back and do those things. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, each of our journeys, and, I say this to everyone, we can all look back at our lives and go, I can look back at my 20s now and go, I was renting my body, not occupying it, because I know now
right.
what it is to
Yes.
show up in the world, occupying the length and breadth of your potential and who you can be in
Yes.
the world. But I wouldn't have been here but for my unique journey. So never regret. I think for
No.
everyone, the good and bad that has happened to you, everything and where you're standing right now, you stand on the shoulders of all of those experiences.
So true.
So my law background, as much as I hated every moment of it, most of the times with my technology company, as I'm integrating into different platforms, I'm with CEOs, I'm with board members as they're changing their whole systems, and they're taken aback and surprised because I'm able to sit and talk about governance. I can sit and talk about issues that a typical L&D person has
Right.
no idea about. It's because I was in mergers and acquisitions. I know how to
Right.
structure. I've done enough contract negotiations. So you're absolutely correct. There is nothing, even my urban planning degree, which you will laugh about. When I went to architecture school, everyone said, was like, what are you doing going to architecture school? But my classes in urban planning was great because it showed me how we act differently in
Yes.
different environments. Now, those are physical environments. That same
Totally.
knowledge I've taken now online in our tech platforms.
Yeah.
And I'm very conscious about how our users look and feel in our products, in our environment. And people often go, how do you know that stuff? And I go, from architecture school.
Isn't that so funny? But it's probably like the physical environment is probably very similar to what someone would experience in like a culture environment, right? Because your environment, physical or mental or emotional or all of those things, like it changes.
Yeah. So online, most people forget that we need to treat people exactly how we would treat them in a physical environment because we
Yes.
have to engage all of the senses.
Yes.
And that's why most learning platforms, the engagement is very low. For many of them, it's not more than 10%.
Yeah.
It's because everybody just assumes, but if you start treating it in a very different way and you treat it as a physical environment, it's like someone coming to your house. How
Right.
do you greet them at the door? When they come inside, how do they feel?
Mm.
How are those touch points while they're in there? If they want to go on to the ladies' room, or you want to send them off in a different direction on your online platform, is that
Right.
easy? Is that difficult? Are they going to get lost?
Right.
When they leave, is that the last they're going to hear from you? So all of those things I got from architecture school.
It's amazing. It's really honestly amazing. When because I know we're talking a lot about soft skills here, which I really
Yeah.
do want to dive into GLEAC a little bit, but before we do, you do have like a lot of different areas where you've developed skills, but you've decided in your professional life to focus on soft skills. You've said that, what you call soft skills is sort of like your power, right? I call it superpowers. But
Yeah.
what how would you have said that that was just something, I know you mentioned like this is something you've had all the time, being able to connect with people. Is there some way through your life or through education that you felt like this really just cemented in you? And that's why you chose to focus on that? Or do you feel like that combination of skills, that uniqueness is what is the power?
So let me ask you a question, and why,
Yeah.
and you'll understand why I focus on soft skills. Think about the most, the person you admire the most in any environment, your home environment, your work environment, and what is the thing that makes you find them so special? Is it going to be something like they have a certificate from wherever, or is it something about the way they make you feel?
It's
It could
so
be,
funny you said that. I was literally thinking the same words. I'm like, it's totally how they make you feel.
yeah. So if you look at the people who have risen to the top of, let's, in terms of your professional
Yeah.
audience,
Yeah.
to the top of the corporate ladder. So let's look at, someone like Satya Nadella,
Yeah.
Microsoft. Everyone
Yeah.
talks about his empathy. Now, yes, he did go to IIT and he does have coding and he does have, but if you look at the skills that get people to rise to the top, Sundar Pichai, of Google, it's his diplomacy. Indra Nooyi, formerly of PepsiCo, it's her communication skills. If you look at the people
Interesting.
who
Interesting.
rises, it is always, and when I talk about soft skills, just to define, for
Yeah.
your audience, what I mean, I kind of bucket it into 10 core areas that kind of cover the whole work spectrum. So,
Mm-hmm.
you have your 4 C's: communication, critical thinking, collaboration,
Yep.
creativity, judgment and decision making. I have entrepreneurship, mindfulness, emotional IQ.
Love it.
Um, so it's kind of this bucket,
Yeah.
direction of skills. And underneath that, you can have different sectors of it. Now, if you look, Kelly, at all of the studies, so there is something called Google Project Oxygen
Hmm.
that was
Okay.
recently updated. And they looked at the top skills of their managers. 9 out of the 10 of them were soft skills. One of them,
No way.
I'm not kidding you. One of them. If you go look at studies dating back, there is a study from Harvard, from Stanford. 85% of job success comes from soft skills,
Hmm.
right? So,
See this? I'm like writing this down.
yeah, scientifically, even though it was a personal awakening for me, because, and
Right.
it was a personal awakening because I come from a very Asian Caribbean household where hard skills is what's valued.
Got it.
Um,
Got it.
so it was this awakening that, hold on, the thing that
Yeah.
my parents were most afraid of with me, I was sent, away to boarding school because I was too confident and I communicated with complete strangers. That's unheard of in my culture.
That's
Um,
amazing.
but that's actually my strength. My
Yeah.
strength is you can put me in the middle of, anywhere, and I will make friends and I will communicate and I will be teaching before you know it, in whatever their
This
language.
is like a revelation for me, and not because we haven't talked about this before, y'all. Like, this is the funniest part about this, is that we've had this, Sallyann and I have really like jumped into our stories together, and it's like
Yeah,
just, I absolutely love it. But what the revelation for me is that, we have some similarities in the way that we were as children, right? So like, it's so
yeah,
funny because I was always the one, but again, even though we grew up in different cultures, that was not right for a woman, like a girl,
yeah,
to be,
yeah,
outspoken, or for a girl to, have that, like, girls were supposed to be quiet and sit
yeah,
nicely and not be out and playing and roughhousing and all the
yeah.
things. So, but the revelation here is that when you described like how the most successful people and what they're like, that is something that we've never talked about. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Just think about it. Just think about it in your current work environment, or think about everyone who's listening. Who are the
Yes.
people you respect the most? Who are the people who influence you the most? Who are the people, and you might say, oh, it's the CEO, but after you say the CEO, you ask the question why. And when you ask the question why, it will always come
Yep.
back to a soft skill.
It's
It will always come
amazing.
back to a soft skill.
It's amazing.
So
And for
so
anyone out there who might be like, I mean, soft skill for us in the skills world, we all know what that means. But like for people, I know around the world, we call soft skills, just in case anyone's like, okay, I get communication, all those things,
Yeah.
but sometimes they're called human skills. Sometimes they're called life skills. We joke, like I call them superpowers. What do you call them?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a combination, right? So right now, I think Microsoft is calling them power skills.
Power skills. That's it.
I call them human skills.
Okay.
I think in the education sector in the US, they call it SEL, social and
Yes.
emotional learning.
Yes.
We're all talking. Some people
Yeah.
call it 21st century skills. We're all talking about the same
All
thing.
the same thing.
All the same thing. So to answer your question, in short, the reason why I have focused on this area is because we have always known this area is the game changer. We just
Yeah.
never knew how to measure it. And that's where I spent the time filing my patent, because I
Yeah.
realized if I didn't come up with a measure for it, it becomes very difficult. How do you tell people? How do you signal to
Right.
an employer, hey, my communication skills are at a level 5 if I'm using, Dox and Bloom's taxonomy? That's a nerdy
Right.
thing. But I can in my communication, it's not just I can take things apart, I can synthesize stuff, I can bring all kinds of stuff together and make it so simple that you're like, oh my gosh, like how do you
Yeah.
know that, right? That's a great communicator, when they can tell you something
Right.
so simply that you're like, and then you kind of look at their entire accolades and you're like, oh my gosh, but they've spent 10 years in that and they just explained that in a Twitter sentence for me. I would have never understood that, right? You have a master communicator in front of you.
Right.
How do
Right.
you signal that? And that's what the patent is about, in terms of creating a way that people can signal to jobs, to educators, to the world, here's where I stand on these
Yeah.
in the workplace.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit more, because like I just find not only what you've decided to patent, but the whole premise around GLEAC and like how, I've seen it, you guys. And so this is amazing, but let's dive in there, because this is like, to me, and like you said, there has been no way to measure this. This is like first time getting into this stuff. Obviously, I mentioned when we started that you've got this amazing opportunity where you're going to be upskilling people through this like ginormous event. For those of you who are not familiar with World Expo, it's like the Olympics. What did you call it? The Olympics of business? It happens every 5 years, and people, like a country literally builds like a city around this event. And so Sallyan's business is going to have, like, their platform is going to be upskilling attendees with soft skills and the whole concept. So I'm going to leave it there. Like, I want you to jump in and say, like, this is really honestly amazing.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about this. So I'll tell you exactly what GLEAC is doing at Expo, and then I will kind of explain to you the premise behind GLEAC. So GLEAC will be mapping everyone who visits their soft or their human skills, power skills, whatever we want to call it, to not existing jobs, but emerging jobs. So we have gone and looked at jobs that will be happening 3 to 5 years. You can't look past 5 years. Nobody knows. If anybody tells you they know what jobs is after 5 years, they're lying. So we've looked at what is coming down the pipeline over the next 3 to 5 years. And then we started mapping, and people go, well, how do you do that? Right. And it's really simple, right? So think of the job of a data scientist, right? So most people say, what is a data scientist? A data scientist is that job we knew 10 years ago called an actuary. It's an actuary who can tell stories.
Yes, I love it.
Right. So most emerging jobs are combinations of other jobs. So recently we just did a benchmark for a contact tracer. So contact tracer, prior to this year, nobody had a clue what that role even was. That's a combination of 3 jobs that we put together. It's part of a humanitarian worker. It's part of, research. It's part of, so we put together to be able to go, that emerging job will require this particular in terms of human skills. So at Expo, we will be, everyone will have that opportunity to be able to go, okay, where do I stand for that job? 3 downs on, and then what we do once is that you get to choose a unique learning journey and we call it micro practices. It's 10 minutes a day. And you get to practice those skills in that role for a 3-month period.
Cool.
And then we credential you on it. And our credentialing is, very unique and very, I'm sure everyone is familiar with digital badges. We do not do that.
Okay.
Our and nothing's wrong with that.
Sure. Yeah.
Our credentialing, we kind of looked at credentialing in a very different way. So we looked at credentialing going, how can we allow an employer to see you apply those
Yes.
skills,
Yes.
right? Because you having a certificate in leadership doesn't actually mean you know how to act
Right.
like a leader
Right.
in all situations, right? You might just be
And
good
it
at
still
memory work.
doesn't give you the proficiency level of those skills.
No, and you might just be very good at taking tests and memory.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's our current education system, right?
Yeah.
It's very much based on memory. So what GLEAC does in these micro practices, it's almost like a simulation. We put you in situations and you get to see your quality of thought, what you're going to do in those situations. And we allow employers to look inside. You can turn it on and off. So
Wow.
we can actually allow people to see how you think and how you act. So the measure is both quantitative, qualitative, and a 360 feedback. And some of the signaling we do on GLEAC is, other than continuing CPD accredited, we are K-12 accredited for high school. We are
Cool.
recognized by job portals. So for example, Monster is one that we have right now. The job portals, people who have our soft skills index get to the top of job search. And we are in the process right now of getting going for ACE accreditation in the US. So if we
Cool.
can get that and
Yeah.
get university accreditation for where you can kind of signal, and not the traditional of, okay, here I have it for university, but you know what? Look inside how I think and how
Yes.
I apply it. All of a sudden, it's this completely different way to look and evaluate someone, right? So if I
Yeah.
want to look at Kelly and go, I really want to see what Kelly's judgment and decision making looks like in a management role, in whatever industry, there can be a series of micro practices where I look and I see what Kelly does and thinks
That's
in that
amazing.
situation.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So when this learning content that's going to be available in the system, is that proprietary? Did you guys build that out as well?
Yeah, so that's the
Wow.
foundation's work for the last 9 years. So,
See, and like this is what we talked about, all of these layers that add up to be the thing.
absolutely,
Like this,
absolutely.
this
So
work through
most
the
people,
foundation.
yeah. So most people, they're surprised when they see our content because they've never seen anything like it, so
Yeah.
I say with great humility, but also super proud of us that there's nobody out there who can match our content,
It's crazy.
and that's one of the reasons why, people often go, but you're a tiny startup. How have you gotten clients, like Accenture, and how have you gotten these clients? And I say, they just look at our content and they look at our, how our learning journeys are designed and the thoughtfulness and and they've never seen anything like that
Yeah.
before. And I'm super proud of us for that.
That's amazing. And when you originally did those learning journeys, those were you guys were looking at risk youth and adults, right? Like or was it a particular audience?
So how the foundation was set up was, from the very beginning, we were a social enterprise. And what we would do at the foundation is we would go into corporates, look at their skill gaps and design plugs for their skill gaps. But we would only work with companies who, if we were going to spend the time and effort upskilling their people, they had to adopt schools in the community and teach back what we taught them for the entire school year.
Wow.
So what happened, Kelly, is that this robust curriculum got designed not only with us corporate facing, our corporate clients with the foundations are some of the largest entities in the world,
Wow.
Nestle, DP World, huge banks, huge oil and gas companies.
Mhm.
So we were already working with very sophisticated corporates, but we were also kind of doing a train the trainer model where they were teaching it back into the community. So we were designing and developing robust material from the very beginning.
This is like, it's just so, it's like all the pieces together, you know what I mean? Like I just love
Yeah.
to see it. And it's so evident every time we've chatted, like how you truly just want people to be able to like unlock their special powers, right? So it's, I mean, to me, the way that you started this and where you've come to now, it's just, it's so love. I mean, honestly, I just can't even say enough about it. It's like so wonderful the way that you've really wanted to help people from the beginning, the way you set up that loop. I mean, that's just like
Yeah,
the pay it forward kind of concept where like, okay, like we're going to do this, but let's like amplify it through our community.
yeah, and here's the thing about it. You're absolutely correct. I allowed corporates to be able to truly have community engagement. But what I also allowed corporates to do with the foundation program is there's something called the forgetting curve. And basically what that means is that within 7 days, if any material you get, whether it is you read an article, video, I mean, all of us read all kinds of stuff and watch stuff
Sure.
every day. We get so inspired and we're like, oh, I'm absolutely going to do that. But the
Yeah.
reality is if you don't teach it or you don't put it into practice within 7 days, about 80% of it is lost.
Interesting.
So what I was actually doing with sending corporates back into the community is that I was ensuring that those corporates were getting an ROI on what I was doing and spending the time and energy of the team teaching them. Because the reality was, even if the corporates were not putting it into practice, because I was making their teams teach it back into the community, the material became very sticky. So I
Wow.
was always making sure I was impacting the individual. And, talking about the reason why I do all of this, it's a very personal one. I think so many of us, and I did for such a long time, we leave the best parts of ourselves at the door,
Yep.
in our lives and even in our corporate work. And
Yes.
sometimes it's because we don't know those parts of ourselves. So I did not know. I did not know I was this person I am in my 20s. I just did not know.
Yep. Yep.
And some of us, we are forced to, right? Some of us, we have to fit a circle into a square when we walk into the office or when we walk into our lives. A lot of
Yep.
times women, we have to,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because we are considered somebody's wife, daughter, all of these roles,
Roles.
and we forget that we just are. So the fact, if I can, with GLEAC, be able to have everyone become self-aware of
Yes.
what makes them so special, what makes all of us so special to be humans, right? Because that journey is such a awesome journey. And many of us live a robot journey, not
Yes.
the awesomeness of the human journey. And if I can allow people to know what that is for them, and then to show up and not have the fear and recognize it as a strength and
It's
recognize the value of it and
yes.
show up in life and work with that, I think all of these issues we talk about in the workplace, engagement, lack
Yes.
of it, our inability, laziness. I think all of those
All
things
of it.
start dissipating
Yeah.
because we fully start participating and showing up in
But
the
not
business.
only does this, I mean, like, not only does this change how we're acting at work, but it
Yeah,
also changes how we act in every facet of our life. So, like, I can't, when I think of what you describe now, I've gone through a similar situation. I did not know my true self. I would say this happened within the last year for me, although there were inklings of it where, like, I just wasn't allowing the full me, right? So I think everyone can appreciate that. And anyone who has tried to do this, you included, Sally, and you said like those years as a lawyer, it was like dying on the inside. That's exactly how I would have described when I tried to fit into the mold that I thought I was supposed to be in.
yeah,
And so your confidence is low. The way you are with your family is terrible. The way that you're acting at work, like, although you can put your face on for a while, you can
yeah,
act the way you need to act. For the most part, like your body is just rebelling. So I think everyone can appreciate this. And not only is it going to help how things are happening in the workplace, which I think is wonderful, but I think
yeah,
it also changes now how everyone acts within every other area. The way they treat their family is like that confidence, that self-awareness, that self-esteem,
yeah,
that that can change the world.
yeah. So I have to say this to you, Kelly. When I first met you, you are blooming. You are absolutely blooming. And it's such a lovely
Oh,
thing to experience because we cannot see in others what we don't see in ourselves. We cannot
Yes.
recognize. And I think, when you come across individuals who are so open and who are so embracive, and so they're blooming themselves on their
Yeah.
inside. And I felt that immediately
Aw.
when I met you. So woohoo for you.
Thank you. And that's, I mean, we felt an immediate connection because there were so many things that just felt right. But it was like anyone that I feel like we can have that conversation, that's like the universe is making these things just happen
Absolutely.
in the right order. That's the
Yeah.
kind of person that is on that journey. But everyone can be on that journey. And I think I would add, since we're talking about skills here, and I often talk about how these skills are developed. So some people might listen to us, and if they haven't yet been able to live outside of the box that the world has determined they're supposed to live in, that what we're talking about, you might get angry about. Because I know if I listened to this 10 years ago, I would have been like, well, whatever, But this is learned, okay? Because I can tell you, like, someone might sit here and be like, oh, well, you've been doing skills forever. Even I have been doing skills forever. Sallyann has been doing skills forever. And this was not something we just automatically knew. So don't feel disheartened in any way. All of what we're describing right now is 100% learned.
Yeah, and I think what happens, and one of the things I often say, I'll give you the funny story. When I first came out to this region, I'm here in Dubai right now. I was invited out to design a program for Abu Dhabi. It's an emirate, kind of like a state in the US. Yeah. And they said, can you please send your degrees, right? So I'm designing an educational at a national level program for them. It's something that comes natural to me, and I send my degree, I send my, what degree did I have at the time? My highest degree, it's my law degree. So I get a phone call back and they say, but it's a law degree. Where is your educational degree? Like, where is your doctorate in education? And I go, I don't have one. And there was that moment of this apprehension going, oh my goodness, like I wouldn't, like maybe they will change their mind. And It was so interesting. They came back to me and they said, well, anyway, you have a doctorate in law. Anyone who has a doctorate is accepted. But there is that moment in time where I do not have, of all of those things you just talked about, I have zero qualification. Zero. I don't know coding. I don't know anything about, as I said to you, data science, applied math to build algorithms. And these are the things and how I will leave my mark in the world. I have zero teaching certificate. I
actually love that, because I think more people need to understand, right? Like, and you said it perfectly. You going through and getting those degrees was you trying to live inside that box. And I was the same way. I had no choice but to go directly into university in my life. Like, that was just, it was going to be not acceptable whatsoever. You were going to be considered like long gone if you did not go and do that. And so, like, I can appreciate that, but you now are realizing that. And I wonder if you could like break that down to me. When I hear what you're describing, I'm like, you know what it is though? You're not letting that hold you back. Like, you're just always being curious. You're like, it's fine. Okay. Because I'm here to learn, and you're just being open-minded about it. And if someone really truly, like, I can imagine if that person came back to you and was like, well, you need to have a, PhD in some education thing, you'd be like, oh, that's too bad. I'll find another thing.
Exactly. And you know what? I would offer to help that person who they hire. Right. So here is what's interesting about the time that we're in now and what you just said. So most of us have often limited our next move by our degrees and our experience. And what's really interesting about the world that we're in right now and the time that we're in right now is we can't anymore. So whereas with our parents, a degree had a job span of a lifetime, sometimes 15 years. Now you're lucky when you go into college, when you graduate in 4 years, what you learn actually, if it even matters anymore.
Applies.
I mean, that's the reality, right?
Well, it's just what you described with those emerging jobs. I mean, you're exactly right. Everything is changing so frequently.
Yeah.
And these jobs, like that one job now becomes 3 jobs.
Absolutely. So this is where now the conversation is happening all over the world, where is the value of whether it is a 2 or 4 year degree, is that of any value anymore? And should credentialing and badging take place for skills and per semester?
Yeah.
So that's the conversation the world is having, which is very much based on what we've been speaking about. Now, clearly, in terms of academia, they're looking at in terms of hard skills, and the soft skills is now weaving in through
Yeah.
everything, right? But if you look right now, you look at all the big organizations in the world, again, Microsoft, IBM, you name
Yeah.
them,
All of
every
them.
major school system, everyone is looking at semester credentialing, looking at digital badging,
Yep.
looking at, and all of it tied to skills.
Yep.
I think it was last week I read IBM just they're beta testing a blockchain where all of these credentials can go on there, so jobs of the future can just be able to access what your credentials are happening at that time.
Exactly. It happens immediately. Like you don't need to
Yeah,
get a transcript anymore.
absolutely. And, I always foresaw, in terms of GLEAC, when people always say, where is GLEAC heading? And I said, one day,
Oh
just with
yeah.
automation and everything,
Yeah.
jobs and projects will need to differentiate and find humans. And guess what? A badge saying you have, some type of hard skill is not going to differentiate you from a robot. It's going
Right.
to be the human skills, and then they're going to go, okay, let me see how you apply and how good you are at those human skills. And that
Yes.
is the data set I'm building at GLEAC.
It's amazing.
So that is, I always saw that, and I didn't know if it was going to be in a blockchain. I don't know,
Right.
what will be the final channel, but I just know how we as humans, rational or irrational as we are,
Yep.
will look at something and make some kind of judgment and decision making. There is no way, what is automation, right? Whether it's machine learning or whether it's intelligent, artificial intelligence, at the end of the day, we decide things or we do things that nobody can understand,
Yeah.
right? And the ability to see that and see how we got to that is what's going to really kind of set us apart. So
Really
it's,
will.
Kelly, everything I'm speaking about, the time is now. Whereas before, I would talk about it and I have to
Oh,
tell
and
you, people,
people were sort of like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kelly, they would look at me and be like, what is she smoking?
Seriously.
No,
I have been
no.
there, so I get it.
Now, can I tell you, I wake up every day and it's like you're riding a wave and
Yeah.
something that you have seen and you have been working on, and now you can have conversations about it, and you're invited at the table. I have to
Right.
pinch myself, Kelly, sometimes
It is,
at
right?
the table that I'm sitting going, I wonder, are they sure?
Right. Like a few months ago, you guys were the ones that were like, whoa, that's a little too.
Absolutely, absolutely,
No,
absolutely.
it's so true. So now, like with Gleek, because I feel like now if I was listening to this, I'd be like, yeah, so I need to do that.
Yeah.
How
Yes,
can people actually access your system?
absolutely.
Or okay, so how do they access
Absolutely. So, GLEAC, you can certainly, GLEAC right now is in B2B, and also you can access it in a beta version of B2C. You can go to the Google Play and the App Store,
it? Okay,
and you can download it and have
cool.
that version of it. Or you
Okay,
can certainly contact us, go to our website at gleac.com, and we work with some of the biggest companies in the world, happy to say that, doing
yeah.
really interesting work right now. Really
Yeah.
interesting work.
Yeah, everything that I've seen. So I highly suggest checking it out. If not for yourself, like for your organization, because everything that I've seen so far, this is like and it truly is cutting edge. Like this is the future. I 100% agree in terms of the skills and jobs and how things are changing. So definitely check it out, not only for yourself, but for your organization, because I really think that this is going to be the thing that changes. So as
Yeah,
we
and I
wrap it up,
appreciate that.
yeah,
Yes.
no, I mean, I think they should. So as we wrap this up, Sallyann, is there any parting words that you'd like to offer to the audience? I know that that seems like a really big ask, but I feel like I can say that to you because you always have these like nuggets that are just so transforming.
Yeah, what I can say to, everyone is we're just passing through, all of us, and we forget that. And this journey is as big and wide and tall as you can imagine. So whatever you have going on right now, imagine bigger and imagine taller and imagine wider. And when you talk about the universe conspiring, I can tell you that when you step up, and very often it's one foot with courage and one foot
Yeah.
with tremendous fear. When you step
So
up, the world
true.
steps up to bat with you. And I wish that for every single one of you watching.
Yep. I love that, Sallyann. Thank you so much for those parting thoughts. So you guys, we already mentioned that you can find more information about GLEAC at gleac.com, which is GLEAC. If you'd like to follow Sallyann, she is available on LinkedIn at Sallyann Della Casa and on Twitter at Sallyann GLF. And then, thank you all for listening in to this episode of Let's Talk About Skills, Baby. You can find me on, I think I'm going to point to the right direction here, on these social platforms at Kelly Ryan Bailey. The podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and the video version on YouTube. So however it is that we just talked about learning in all different ways. And that's why I have platforms that have listening or viewing, because everyone likes to do this a different way. So you have that there, but I would really appreciate some feedback, subscriptions, and ratings from you all. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.